Well, thank you for coming out tonight, everybody. It's wonderful to see so many familiar and friendly faces here. So I've been with Our Place for 11 years now. So I've worked with all three of the CEOs who were mentioned here tonight, and still finding it to be an incredible journey every single day. So the book that we're discussing tonight is Muddy Water by Tysick. And it's full of anecdotes, humor, heartbreak, and spiritual insight from the many years that Al spent working within the street community. I'd like to talk a little bit about Al's writing process and the journey that brought him here. So Al, what inspired you to keep a diary of these daily encounters with those struggling with poverty, addiction, and mental health?
I guess my diary has been like a foundation stone for me over my ministry, and I've kept that diary under the direction of one of my professors at McGill suggested we do that, and I'm so glad that he did and follow that diary that captures in all of my books, and I don't know how many diaries I would have at home. Mary would probably know, she complains about them all the time. I write, "These words will record my faith and my lack of faith, my hopes and my fears. It will record when I am faithful to the Lord and when I'm not." And I tried to be truthful to those words over the diary, over the years, and that's what kept me going. Many times, something would happen and you'd be down and not feeling good and sad, and then all of a sudden I'd pick up the diary, and I remember a day when something happened or something was given that brought you joy, and it gave me the strength just to move on another day. Sometimes people see us executive directors as just being all on top of it, and that's a type of face we'd like to put on. But often we feel lonely. Often we're alone. Often we're questioning the very things we have to make decisions of. So,
the one thing that I really found reading the book is that it's the same thing when I'm out on the street on Pandora. But I love the honesty that we hear from those in the street community. It's actually such a rare thing for us to hear, just that raw honesty, that it often stops us in our tracks. You have many examples of this in your book. Are there any particular stories or street advice that jumps out at you?
I'm not going to tell any of the stories in the book. I want you all to buy one, of course, so why would I do that? But I am going to tell you a story about that. It's a December day. It's cold in Victoria, and people are gathering up early in the morning, getting warm and getting a coffee and warming their hands at the drop-in center. I get a call from an emergency doctor who I knew at Jubilee. He tells me about a 13-year-old that walked out of the hospital, and if he didn't get his medication, he was pretty sure by the end of the day he would be dead. So I gathered up everybody in the drop-in center. There's about 50 men and women there, told them the story and asked them would they look. A First Nation person from a house that stands up, he was a trapper at one time, organizes them into groups of 5, and organizing them out to 5. There's a bag lady there that lives in Victoria. She hardly said anything, but now and then she came in to get warm. She walked up to me. I was surprised because she said, "I want to help. What can I do?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for an organizer." She said, "Well, I could do that. I used to be the secretary to the Minister of Finance in Saskatchewan." I don't know if that was true or not, but it was a good story. But she was very organized, and she organized not only ourselves, but the police and taxi drivers all day. Later in the afternoon, a woman found him called the police. The police came, picked him up, and put him back into the hospital. So stories like, you just don't expect a drop-in center to do that, you know. Addicts, mentally ill. The point I want to make is we're all like them. We're all part of a human fabric. The strings that run through a fabric, the stronger we're able to support those, the stronger as a fabric we are. And that's what I want you to remember.
Throughout the book, there's history in the book too, the history of your journey. And you talk about the struggles, financial and otherwise, that our place went through in the early years. In the book, you refer to fundraising as panhandling, as you fought to extend the hours of operation and the number of meals available. There have been so many generous donors over the years, and up to this day. Some of the most memorable gifts have actually been from the family members themselves. Do you have any favorite stories about that?
I certainly do. The word had got out onto the street that the open door and the upper room were going to amalgamate into one, and we're going to build another facility, a multi-million-dollar facility. That facility cost $15 million back then to build. There was a well-known family member that came in, and just a couple of days earlier, he had lost his thumb, it had frozen, he went to the hospital, and they had to cut off his thumb. So he said, I understand that you and I are alike, we're both panhandlers. He says, I panhandle on 4th Street, and you just panhandle in bigger pockets. Well, you know, he had a point. You know, I remember being at an organization, a Lions Club, I think it was, and one of the members said, every time you walk into a room, I put my hands in my pocket. Anyway, he clears his pockets. This fellow with the one thumb clears his pockets. Cigarette butts and pencils and pieces of paper and 1 Canadian quarter. He says, that Canadian quarter's yours. It's a kickoff for your panhandling. You can start the panhandling with that. It's a lucky quarter, he said. So that's the first donation I received towards the Arts building. I was surprised. Didn't know this was happening, but Alan Lowe, the mayor of the city at that time, went to a mayor's conference. And at the mayor's conference, he brought back $5 million from the provincial government, $5 million from the federal government as a kickoff. Now I had $10 million in 1 quarter to start off that campaign. You know, the generosity of people during that campaign, I honestly didn't have to work hard at it. People were walking into my office and giving me money. I think of the 8-year-old that walked in with a bottle of change. It was her allowance that she had. And she gave me her allowance towards the building. It's gifts like that. It's the small gifts. Sometimes we're thankful for the big gifts, and certainly we are. But it's those small gifts that sometimes we forget about, and I think we should be thankful for.
And those things happen still to this day. We have kids coming in. We had some just not that long ago where some girls came in and they had done a lemonade stand, and the money they raised was coming to our place. You know, and then on our hands we'll have people who give us $1 million for the TRC and things like that. So it's quite amazing, the range of gifts that come in. Now, one thing that really struck me as I read the book, and that was your spiritual journey. I know you were called to the ministry sort of later in life, but the progression of how you found God in the faces of the street population is very profound. Can you talk a little about that journey?
A journey of faith that we've all been on certainly has its ups and downs. The journey of faith at times has been so enriched me and encouraged me. At other times, I felt like a failure. You feel like a failure. You feel you should be doing more, or why don't they understand, or why am I always defending the poor? Why am I always defending them? I like the earlier interview where he says, I'm just asking you to say hello to people. I'm just asking you to say hello to people. And just to be able to say hello, by the way, the man interviewing me, Brad Newcomb, in that was one of the first self-declared homosexuals to be ordained. And I want to say I ordained him. I was the president of the conference at that time. So I ordained him, and years later we worked together. So it's little things like remembering to say thank you.
The one thing that I find that when you're doing this kind of work, and we see it a lot with the staff at our place, because they're so empathetic and so compassionate for the people they serve, but that can, cause compassion fatigue at times. In your journey, did you ever lose faith?
I like Paul Tillich, who says, faith and belief are like two neutron stars spinning around one another and pulling each other apart at the same time. The time I gained the most of my faith was at moments of despair. Moments of waiting in the laneway. One time I walked in, near the end of my ministry, walked into a lane, and two fellows were beating another fellow up with baseball bats. They ran. I called the police and held this man as he bleeded in my mouth, and I screamed out, "Where are you now, God? Like, where are you?" So it's at that moment that I questioned, but at that moment I also grew in faith, was able to. Anyone thinks that Christianity is a comfortable place to be, better read the book again. It is a very uncomfortable place. It calls us to the cross. And if I'm going to recommend one book, not mine, although it's better than a book called Silence by Shusaku Endo. A book called Silence by Shusaku Endo, and that talks about the struggle of faith in that book.
We've seen a lot of changes on the streets over the last few years, especially when it comes to addiction. With the introduction of fentanyl on the streets, as also the severity of the mental illness that we're seeing on the streets, where do we find the hope that solutions can be found?
Because of my ripe age, I was in the city when opium was a big problem. We were producing opium in Victoria for a while. We had a license to do that. Then heroin came on the scene, and that was a major issue. We never thought we'd get over that one. Then cocaine, and then fentanyl. And it'll be something else tomorrow that comes on that's cheaper and more potent. But it's hitting someone with that Narcan needle in the heart and all of a sudden watching them come back to life, eyes practically popping out of their heads. It's to sit beside somebody in a hospital room and the next morning they wake up and you're still there. And there's a touch between you, a mental touch, a hold that happens and never leaves. That feeling that you are one. They are a member of this fabric, and you are a member of the fabric, and not one more important. But it's remembering that day in the alley when the young man died in my arms, I lost my mojo. I was 2 years more at our place. I stayed 2 more years, but I tell you, it was the hardest 2 years I'd ever spent. It was really a tough 2 years for me, that last 2 years of it. And people say, do you miss it? Well, it was one of Grant's, I don't know if you know of Grant's published author, and it's like picking up one of his books and reading one of those books and being inspired by the book, but glad to put it down and pick up the next book he's going to write. You know? So I really never missed it. I think that 2 years prepared me for it, and I was ready to move on to a new book, which you're holding in your hand.
It makes me wonder where we would be if Narcan hadn't been invented. You know, with all the desperation that we're seeing with fentanyl, but Narcan, we've saved so many lives in the hopes of, if a life can be saved today, hopefully that can inspire change tomorrow. But I wonder where we would be if Narcan hadn't hit the scene. Would the government have taken it more seriously, taken addiction more seriously?
You see what we did, and of course it's so easy to blame the people on the streets that are using. What we did is we nearly legalized it in the last little while, eh? But we didn't provide the services for that. Still today, getting into a treatment center takes weeks. Sometimes you don't get in. You know, we didn't provide mental health easy access. It's still difficult to get in. It's still very difficult, especially if you got... That always happens when I talk. Especially, when you talk about people that are addicted, it just, I lost my place. That's okay. One time I was doing a sermon and all my papers went all over the floor. I managed. But somebody did ask me why I delivered the 7th page before the 5th. Anyway, I'm just going to sit down again. What was the question?
We were talking about what if Narcan hadn't been invented?
Oh, yeah. So we didn't provide the mental services. Not easy to get in, not easy to get into. It's a puzzle, and what we like doing, what government likes doing, and I've been part of it, fixing one piece of the puzzle, building our place. Well, you know what I really believed? Boy, I really believed it. I believed if we built our place, people would be able to come and have a normal meal, not in a lineup. They'd come, they'd sit down, they'd be served, they'd have a normal, like we do in the restaurant. But that wasn't the case. The numbers kept on getting greater and greater, and the long lines kept on getting longer and longer, So rather than for me to look at the people on heroin or fentanyl, I look at the structure around us. And maybe it's part of that human fabric as well.
One thing that really struck me this week, because of the election cycle, is you have Skip Wilson, who owns Lululemon, in an $80 million mansion, putting a billboard in front of his house, yelling about the NDP. And it struck me that the gap between rich and poor continues to grow ever wider. Can you give us the reasons why you see poverty is growing?
We have a structure that says that the growth of our country is the growth of the gross national product. I think it is, the gross national product. So if that increases, Canada has done better. And boy, I would like that to change to the most important thing to governments is the health and well-being of its citizens. That's a major change. That moves us from dollars to human beings. And our structure is set up that, you can get away with taxes. Our structure is set up that, when you're born in poverty, like I was, we lived on welfare, and you're holding your mother's hand in a food line, like the mustard seed, waiting to get a little food, and how that makes a kid at 7 years old feel. It's being at the open door at our place and somebody coming in late at night and trying to rudge around to see if he can find a can of soup for them or something, It's like that. So poverty grows. It's legislated. I just want to clear this. Poverty is legislated. We determine, the federal government, not the federal government, the provincial government determines how much you're going to get on welfare, and that's always below the poverty line. That is below the poverty line. So we are legislating poverty. So there could be a change. Just recently, what failed on the floor was Bill 23, a guaranteed annual income for everybody. Boy, would that ever be a change? Would that ever be a change? Boy, so it's things like that, that it's not only the people, it's the structure itself we live in. We have a lot of changing to do.
One of the stories in the book, where you talk about finding a young man inside a dumpster, and one morning, and one thing that popped into my head was, if you had a magical genie, and I could imagine a magic lamp popping up in a dumpster one morning, but if you had a magical genie and were granted 3 wishes to help the street community, what would those wishes be?
Imagine having a place where I could bring someone, or an outreach person could bring someone for health and safety. Imagine bringing them into some place where they'd be cleaned up, maybe stay 3 months. I call it a tune-up on the mind and the soul, What would it be like if we could take someone out of jail and give them a place to live, rather than putting them back in Salvation Army where we picked them up? What would it be like if we had some dreams about the possibility of life instead of death? I just want to talk about, go back to my journey. My journey is connected to the church's journey here in Victoria. That years ago, the presbytery, Victoria Presbytery, it was called, which went all the way up to Duncan. Don't forget to hit those guys up, Julian. They got some money there. Oh, it goes all the way up to Duncan. Decided that they were going to have a minister on the street. Imagine that was new. This is new. So they opened up the open door under the leadership of the late Lawrence Moon, who passed away, and Audrey McLennan, who is here tonight. She's right there, right behind. And Ann Beale went on a national search for somebody to be the executive director of our place, and they called me. And we went, and I became the director. But you can imagine, I went into every pulpit, and I was able to say, I am your minister, but I work on the street for you, for the homeless, the addicted, and the mentally ill. It meant a lot to me, to that type of, and I'd received letters from all sorts of congregations, letters of thanks, prayers from people, a letter saying, well, I'm on a pension, I can't give much, but please accept this $20. I mean, we were a family together, the church was at that time, dreaming dreams. And we never ever had trouble raising money for the open door. I don't know about our place, but for the open door, I know at our place we struggled for a while. But I'm just asking all of you tonight to feel that you are a part of that dream, a part of what's going on at our place, feeding people. I just always talk about, we have 6 showers there that are warm in the morning and still warm at night, being used every day. Boy, it's hard to get people to donate for the money for the hot water and have those showers. We have to have something sparkly, to sell. For all of you who are donating and have donating since the time I was your minister, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and bless you guys.
This morning I was actually in a team meeting, and we started off the meeting by reading the comments that donors had sent in after they gave a donation, and these little comments, and it just lifted up the whole team. When you just hear these sort of simple but heartfelt messages of why people are donating to our place. And so if you ever think that people aren't reading the comments, believe me, we are, because they mean a lot to us, and it really kind of helps kickstart the day. It was wonderful. In Muddy Water, I think every individual that comes to read the book will probably come away with a different feeling or a different favorite story that's in there. But what do you hope that readers will take away from reading the book?
I'd hope that we'd all remember that we are a part of this human fabric, a thread with many others entangled in that thread, that together we can move mountains, that hope is real, that joy is real. You know, you think of everything going on in the world today, but I'm a hopeful person. I'm a hopeful person because of the people I know, because of the church I'm connected to. I'm a hopeful person. I'd hope you'd read that book and go away with some hope.
I'm just about to turn it over to the audience for a Q&A, but just before I do you have any final thoughts before we open it to the floor?
You come out tonight. Thank you. Thank you for coming out, for leaving what you could be doing, your family or your friends, and coming out and listening. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that you don't have to have long hair to work in this business, but after Reverend Al retired, somebody had to step up and grow, and that was delegated to me. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight to listen to Reverend Al, and just around the corner there, we've got books that Al will be signing, and there's cookies as well.